Linda, my wife of 10 years, was waiting for me when I got home from work on Wednesday evening. She asked me to sit down at the table because we needed to talk. Oh, shit, that was the start of many bad talks from what I had read. She then went on to say that she was sure that I knew she loved me and that she would never do anything to damage our marriage. This did not sound good. So I looked at her and said, but she took a deep breath. I knew this was going to be bad. Like I said, I love you and want to grow old with you. But I have decided that I want to take a lover. I hadn't seen that coming in, to put it mildly. And I didn't like it at all. So let me get this straight. You love me. You don't want to damage our relationship, but you want to fuck somebody else, I asked. That is putting it rather crudely. I have met someone that I want to have sex with. That would just be an occasional thing. And I will always be upfront with you about this. I know that I love you enough for this to happen without interfering with how I feel about you. If you love me as much as you say you do, you will let me do this because I feel that I need to do this. Linda said with a smile. Well, I don't understand why you think you need to do this. And I can't imagine how you could even say that it would not affect us. Have you and your lover already made plans? We are tentatively planning on going away for the weekend. Next weekend. She updated with confidence. I have a question for you. And please try to be truthful. How would you react if I made such a proposal to you? I could see the wheels turning, and I knew she would not give me a truthful answer because she would have gone through the roof at the mere suggestion of me doing something like that. I think I would be okay with it. If you assured me that you would not let it affect us. She stated, bullshit, you know full well that you would have gone ballistic at any mention of such a thing. I sneered. She was taken aback and said, I really didn't expect you to get angry with me. I thought that you would love me enough to let me do something that meant this much. Well, whatever you were smoking is definitely illegal. Did you think I would just tell you it was okay to go screw this guy? I suppose you expect me to sit home and wait for you while you spend the weekend screwing him? Maybe I didn't think everything through too well. She said, you think yes. I didn't stop to consider a few things. Like maybe my feelings. If I say no to this? Are you going to go through with it or not? I don't know. I didn't really think you would refuse me. You didn't really think things through too? Well, I'll tell you what. Give me a few days to think about this. We can sit down Sunday afternoon and discuss this after I have had some time to think about it. You kind of shocked me tonight. I went to our bedroom and began moving my things to the guest room. What are you doing? I don't really want to sleep in the same bed with you when you are obviously thinking more about someone else than you are me. I slammed the door after I was in the guest room. I didn't sleep much, but I did come up with a game plan. I also came to the conclusion that if she went through with this, we were finished. The next day I left the house of the usual time, but I never spoke a word to Linda. I called work and said that I needed the next 2 days for personal reason. Then I went to work. I bought 3 voice-activated recorders. I put one close to the phone, one in the bedroom, and one in her car. I also found a phone tap recorder to tie into our phones and installed that the next stop was the cell phone provider. Since my name was on her phone, I had no problem getting a copy of her phone charges. And while she was still at work, I checked into her email accounts. She had opened one which I didn't know about, but the password was easy. I found a treasure trove there. At least I found that she hadn't done him yet. I set it up to forward any emails on that account to me without showing that it was doing it. The last thing for the day was a pair of GPS locators. These were quite small and easy to hide. I was going to put one in her billfold because she would surely keep her cash and credit cards with her. The other would go in her car. I had a busy day, but things lined up to be able to know what was going on with her. The only other thing I needed in that respect was to get her cell phone and see what messages might be on there. I hope to do that in the evening as well as plant the GPS devices. I checked her emails and found that she and Frank Jones had exchanged several emails. Frank Jones was a co-worker, and I planned to shit on his life like he did mine. He emails made it plain that the next weekend was a go. What I said would make no difference. Friday, I went to a highly recommended divorce lawyer. I told him to begin to set things in motion for a divorce with adultery as the cause. Frank Jones was listed as the man, and I wanted to sue him. My lawyer said that would be easy, if I had the proof. I showed him all the emails, phone records, and told him I would soon have audio tapes as well. He was pleased and said he would begin things immediately. When Linda came home that evening, I ignored her and didn't even speak to her. When she was making supper, I walked out and went to a bar to eat and have a few beers. When I arrived home, she stood up and began to talk to me. I just walked past her, went into the guest room, and slammed the door. The only chance she had of saving our marriage was to cancel her plans with Frank, but I didn't think that was going to happen. I ignored her the rest of the weekend until Sunday afternoon. I told her that it was time to talk, and we took seats in the kitchen. I went first. You might have surmised that I am not at all happy with your request. I have given it a lot of thought and can think of no way that I can be okay with this. He said that this would not affect our marriage. But as you can tell, it has already had a very bad effect on it. Well, I can see that you were very angry. If you had looked at it from my point of view, he might have been a little more receptive. I did try to look at it from your perspective, but I have seen no way any good could come from this. So my answer has to be no. How could you be so selfish if you love me? I am the selfish one. It seems to me that your desire to fuck someone else is the most selfish thing I have ever heard. What happens if I do this anyway? There will be some serious consequences for any sex outside of our marriage. We took the same vows 10 years ago, and they said that we were to be exclusive. I know that, but this is just something that I have to do. Well, I guess this discussion is over. You really need to think about this. I got up and walked out of the house. I took my laptop to a Wi-Fi spot and began watching their emails. She was very angry and assured him that she was going no matter what he told her. That was good, because he had already reserved room 125 at the Hilton in Kansas City for Friday and Saturday nights. I immediately reserved that room for Thursday night. They were making this way too easy. They were also planning a romantic date on Saturday evening. They were going for a nice dinner, some dancing, then hot sex. Linda told him that she bought some sexy new underwear just for their date. I got something to eat while I was watching them correspond. They were past my refusal and on to making plans for their weekend. Check-in time was 3 o'clock, so he was going to pick her up at 1 o'clock since it was a 2-hour drive and they could be there as early as possible. I was surprised that he was going to pick her up at the house. I was going to have to see what I wanted to do there. I reserved a room for the weekend. Also, it was close enough to theirs to pick up all the signals. I got all the things I needed the next few days, and I got a couple small fiber optic HD video cameras. I planned on mounting them in the room on Thursday, so I would be all ready to record their weekend tryst. This would be perfect ammunition to go with my divorce filing. I totally ignored her the entire time. But Wednesday was the day of final reckoning for her. I would give her one last chance. If she chose Frank, we were done. I asked her to sit at the table so we could talk for a minute. She didn't look happy, but she did. I began. Have you given any more thought to this? I have, and I still want to do it. I am going to tell you one last time to reconsider. Please don't destroy our marriage. This gruesome God, this is your last chance. And if you go ahead, you will pay a heavy price. I'm going with Frank on Friday afternoon, and I will be back Sunday afternoon. I hope we can get past this and go on. So you chose Frank over me. I guess that tells me all that I need to know. I stood up and walked out of the room. When I got into the guest room, I slammed the door as usual. This time my marriage was done and somebody was going to pay. Thursday morning, I went to work and explained to my boss that I needed that afternoon, and the next day off he wanted to know what was up. So I told him I was finalizing my plans to divorce Linda. He was saddened, but said that he would support me and I could have whatever time I needed. I drove to Casey on Thursday and checked into their room. I got all the devices put in place and checked them all to make sure everything was working fine. I wanted to have all the evidence I needed for the divorce, then I was going to fuck with them. I used my laptop to make sure that all the cameras worked and were aimed correctly. I sat still long enough for them to shut off, then moved around to make sure they all came. Everything was perfect. Then I walked down the hall past the room. I would use that weekend to make sure it was in range. Again, it was okay. I drove back home and contemplated the end of my marriage. I had one more stop to make. I stopped at a gun store and bought a small can of pepper spray. I was going to use this to mess up their romantic date. When I got home, Linda was standing in the kitchen. She looked at me expectantly and I just walked past her without a word. I slammed my door again. Linda came into my room and wanted to be friendly. I told her to save it for Frank because I didn't need a mercy fuck. I turned my back on her and then she left. I slept fitfully that night but had everything in place to end this shit. Friday morning, I got up and left at the normal time and never said a word to her. I went to the lawyer's office and signed the papers. I told him I would have all the evidence by Monday and asked that she be served at work Monday afternoon. I also requested that they serve papers to Frank at the same time. I was suing him for alienation of affection. I checked Linda's GPS, and it appeared she was getting her hair done. I went into the house and opened her suitcase and found her sexy new underwear. They really were quite sexy. Too bad. She wasn't doing this for me. I put on rubber gloves and took out the pepper spray. I sprayed the crotch of her panties in the cups of her bra with it, then put them back in the suitcase. This was going to be fun. I went to our bank and closed all our joint accounts and put all the cash in a new account. Then I canceled all the credit cards which had both names on them. After a satisfying morning, I went home to say goodbye to my wife. It was 12:30, so I knew she would be getting ready for her new man. When I entered my house, Linda was not to be seen, so I assumed she was upstairs getting ready. I walked up to her room and walked in. She stood there in some sexy underwear I had given her once she went to cover herself, but I told her not to be stupid as I had seen it before. She looked very good with a new hairdo, perfect makeup, and lingerie. I had to have my say, "Why, you sure look great." Too bad. You don't make that much effort for me. You know, it's not like that. I just want to make a good impression. As I said, you're much more concerned about what he thinks than you have been about me. I'm sorry. I just wanted to feel sexy today. While you were sexy, you know that I loved you with all my heart. I know you love me. I walked to her and took her left hand in mine. I began slipping her rings off of her. I said I loved you, but you broke my heart. I gave you this ring the day I'm married to you. We said our vows and promised to forsake all others. That meant something to me, obviously, not so much for you. I don't want the ring I gave you on your hand when you were stroking another guy's tool. The engagement ring was my mother's, so I will keep that for the same reason. I slipped both rings in my pocket and let her hand go. She looked stunned but didn't argue with me. I won't be here when he comes. But I don't want him to come into my house. You cannot fuck him here. If you do, I will castrate him and fix you. So no man will ever look at you again. That's a promise. He cannot come into my house. You understand? Yes, I will not let him in. That's good. I will be watching. Why are you being like this? Because the love of my life has just trashed at love. I hope this weekend is worth the consequences. Goodbye, Linda. I turned and walked away from my soon-to-be ex-wife. She was hollering at me as I walked out, but I was done with her. I parked down the street so I could watch. I made sure I was parked where Linda could see me. If he went in the house, I was going to jail, but they would be hurting worse. Pretty soon as car drove up, he walked up to the door and rang the bell, went to open the door, and came right out with her suitcase in hand. She sat it down and put her arms around his neck before giving him a long, deep kiss. As he picked up her suitcase, she looked my way and gave me a smug grin. She sat right next to him in the car and gave me the smug look again as they drove past me. I flipped her off and the smug look disappeared. I went back to my house and changed all the locks in the garage door code. I grabbed the suitcase I had already packed and drove to Casey. I checked in and went in my room and immediately set up my laptop. The camera pointing to the bottom of the bed showed Linda naked. It was obvious he'd already screwed her. It was also pretty clear that he hadn't lasted too long. He came out of the bathroom. He was naked and I had to laugh. He had a very small tool. Linda was accustomed to much more meat than this little fucker could deliver. About that time, Frank walked to the bed by Linda. He was hard again and ready for another go at her. She smiled at him and opened her arms. I laughed when she reached for his little tool. He didn't have to take it easy because I would be surprised if she could even feel that little thing inside her. While did she make a lousy trade? This guy was pitiful. I could see a bit of frustration on her face as he rested. It did not appear like she was going to be very happy with the results of this weekend. She was going to come home frustrated, then get kicked out on her ass the next day. He was soon ready to go again. And he gave her another less than thrilling 4-minute session. He was already done 3 times, and she wasn't even close. This was going better than I had ever hoped it might. I had to quit watching and went out for supper and couple drinks. I left everything recording to have all I might need for the lawyer and also to rub her nose and what a loser she had picked. When I returned, he was asleep and she was looking even more frustrated. This really was fun. After I got over the pain of losing my wife, I went to bed thinking about how much fun I was going to have fucking with them tomorrow. I thought about some of the hot babes I had seen in the bar and knew I would soon be free to pursue them. I fell asleep with a smile in my heart. There was no more anguish for me as my course was plotted and I knew where I was going. I woke refreshed and ready for some fun.